The spaceship Orion Explorer drifted gracefully toward the verdant world of Kalathar, a distant planet just on the fringes of the known galaxy. The planet had been marked as habitable, but early scans revealed no signs of intelligent life. Still, there was something about Kalathar that intrigued scientists on Earth, a strangeness that no one could quite explain. As the landing craft descended through the dense atmosphere, the planet's surface came into view. Vast forests of towering trees covered the landscape, shimmering under the sunlight in colors that ranged from deep emerald to glowing turquoise. It was a breathtaking world, full of life, but the crew noticed something unsettling. Despite the abundance of plants and wildlife, there were no signs of advanced civilizations, no artificial structures, and no energy signatures indicative of technology. "It doesn't make sense," one astronaut remarked, scanning the endless forests. A planet this rich, this perfect, and nothing. But as the astronauts would soon learn, appearances could be deceiving. Kalathar was not as empty as it seemed. Its inhabitants were hiding in plain sight. The astronauts stepped out of their craft, the soft soil of Kalathar crunching beneath their boots. The air was thick with moisture, and the scent of unfamiliar flora filled their helmets. The wildlife was strange, but not threatening. Creatures with delicate wings flitted between the trees, and bioluminescent plants pulsed softly in the underbrush. As the crew moved through the forest, they marveled at the natural beauty around them. The trees seemed to bend toward the astronauts as they passed, their branches forming arches overhead. Yet despite the serenity, something felt off. It wasn't just the absence of any intelligent life. There was a sense of being watched, as if unseen eyes followed their every movement. The astronauts tried to ignore the growing unease. They set up camp and began collecting samples of the flora and fauna. Everything seemed normal at first, but the deeper they ventured into Kalathar's wilds, the more anomalies they encountered. Strange shadows flickered in the corners of their vision, only to vanish when they turned their heads. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation, compasses spun uselessly, and scanners refused to give consistent readings. The planet seemed to be playing tricks on them. After days of exploration with no clear discoveries, the team found what appeared to be a series of unnatural rock formations, a potential sign of an ancient civilization. As they approached, they noticed something even more curious. The rocks were not solid. Instead, they shimmered faintly like a mirage. One astronaut reached out to touch the nearest formation, and their hand passed right through it. The illusion wavered for a moment before fading entirely, revealing a hidden structure beneath, a building of alien design, perfectly camouflaged by the planet's natural environment. Before they could fully process the discovery, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was humanoid but tall and impossibly slender, with limbs that seemed to stretch too long for comfort. Its skin was iridescent, shifting in color to match the surroundings. Its face was featureless, except for a pair of large, gleaming eyes that radiated intelligence. The astronauts froze, unsure of how to react. For a moment, the alien being simply watched them, as if evaluating their intentions. Then, in a flash of light, it disappeared, its form dissolving into the surrounding landscape like a ripple in water. The astronauts were left standing in stunned silence. The crew's shock quickly turned to urgency. They had just made contact with an intelligent alien species, but the encounter had raised more questions than answers. Who were these beings, and why had they remained hidden for so long? The astronauts returned to their base and analyzed the footage of the encounter. They dubbed the aliens the Xorii, after an ancient myth about beings who could vanish into thin air. The Xorii appeared to have an advanced form of camouflage, blending seamlessly into the environment. But it was more than just invisibility. Their technology allowed them to shift their physical presence, making them nearly impossible to detect with human senses. As the days went by, the astronauts became aware that the Xorii were always present, observing them from a distance. The team realized they had to initiate contact if they were to learn more about the planet and its inhabitants. Communication with the Xorii proved to be more challenging than expected. The astronauts attempted to leave offerings of technology and tools, hoping to bridge the gap between species, but the Xorii remained elusive. Every time the astronauts thought they had made progress, the aliens would vanish into the landscape, leaving only faint echoes of their presence behind. The Xorii, it seemed, were not interested in the astronauts' technology. Instead, they communicated through subtle changes in the environment. Patterns would appear in the forest, symbols drawn in the bioluminescent plants, and sounds that resembled the hum of wind would carry messages through the trees. It became clear that the Xorii were not just avoiding humans, they were testing them. One evening, as the crew gathered near their campfire, a Xorii appeared, more clearly than ever before. This time, the alien did not flee. It stood still, its eyes locked on the astronauts, its form shifting between visibility and transparency. Slowly, using gestures and the environment around them, the astronauts began to understand the Xorii's message. They had been watching humans for some time, studying their behavior and learning about their civilization. The Xorii Xorii had the ability to traverse dimensions, shifting between planes of reality. They existed both in the physical world and outside of it, which is why they had been so difficult to detect. As the astronauts continued their exchanges with the Xorii, they uncovered a dark truth. The Xorii were not hiding from humans out of fear. They were protecting Kalathar from humanity. The Xorii explained that they had seen civilizations rise and fall, planets exploited and left barren by species much like humans. They had long ago decided that Kalathar must remain untouched by outside influence. Through their subtle messages, the Xorii warned the astronauts that humanity's arrival on Kalathar could upset the delicate balance they had maintained for millennia. The Xorii had the power to manipulate the planet's ecosystem, and they feared what would happen if humans began to extract resources or build settlements. One astronaut, overwhelmed by the responsibility of their discovery, asked if the Xorii had ever encountered a species they trusted. The Xorii responded with a cryptic display. Patterns of stars and galaxies appeared in the night sky, symbols of long-lost civilizations that had either ascended or been erased. The message was clear, trust was rare, and the consequences of betrayal were irreversible. With the weight of the Xorii's warning hanging over them, the astronauts returned to their ship. They faced a difficult decision. They had discovered a peaceful, advanced alien race, but in doing so, they had also uncovered a fragile ecosystem that could not withstand human interference. The Xorii had not demanded that the astronauts leave, but their message was clear. Kalathar could not survive humanity's exploitation. The crew debated their options. Some argued that the discovery of the Xorii was too important to keep secret, that humanity could learn from their wisdom and technology. Others believed that staying would doom the planet and perhaps even Earth itself to disaster. In the end, the astronauts made a choice. They gathered their data and samples, but left no trace of their presence on Kalathar. The planet and the Xorii would remain a secret, hidden from the rest of humanity. As they departed the world, the crew knew they had made the right decision. Kalathar was not meant to be conquered or colonized. It was a living, breathing entity, protected by the Xorii, an ancient race that had seen too much destruction to trust easily. As their ship ascended into the stars, the astronauts caught one last glimpse of the planet below. For a brief moment, the shimmering outline of a Xorii appeared on the surface, watching them go. The discovery of the Xorii on Kalathar left the astronauts with more questions than answers. They had encountered an advanced species capable of traversing dimensions, a race that could hide in plain sight and blend seamlessly with their environment. But the real lesson was one of restraint. Not every discovery needed to be shared, and not every world needed to be touched by human hands. Kalathar remained, as it always had been, a mysterious, hidden world, shielded by its silent guardians.